Welcome to Leading the Future by Embracing AI, Artificial Intelligence for Organisational Success. I'm Vannessa McCamley, a leadership and performance specialist and the founder of Link Success, neuroscience programs for business. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by James Rutherford, the founder and principal at Rutherford Human Resources, with over 25 years of experience in human resources from a leadership across various sectors, including financial services, consulting, and technology. So Rutherford HR specialises in strategic people and culture consulting, particularly for organisations navigating growth or complex change. Having worked with renowned organisations like Macquarie Bank, Microsoft, and Aon Hewitt, James is deeply versed in crafting solutions that drive success in the modern workplace. James and I first connected during our time at Microsoft, and both of us share a passion for revolutionising the people business to ensure organisation success through optimising people, process, and technology. Welcome, James. It's an honour to collaborate with you and delve into insights into AI and how we can set people up for success. I have a first question for you.
Before you get to that, Vannessa, similarly, an absolute honour, an absolute pleasure to reconnect again, and really looking forward to the conversation. Sorry, but to the first question, maybe.
Sure, James. You were too excited. I was maybe too long in that beginning piece. Question number one, James. How do you envisage AI transforming the modern workplace, and what opportunities do you see emerging as a result?
That is a brilliant first question, Vannessa. I think that and there are a number of almost philosophical standpoints that one might take in answering that question. Let's be more practical than that. In the first instance, the use of AI, and by AI, I mean digital technology to create automation, provides an enormous opportunity for organizations to craft roles that are more fulfilling for their people, to create experiences for their customers that are more engaging, to reduce risk, where risk is created by, to put a name to it, human failure and inaccuracy, and to enhance analysis and processes. So as we enter this conversation, it's worth saying that we're thinking about AI in terms of the automation of process, and less about some of the more creative and generative AI that gets a lot of the publicity, quite rightly. That's a blurry line, but we're thinking about efficiency here. So what is the opportunity? There are maybe two ends to the spectrum. As with all new technologies, depending on your perspective, these are positive or could be negative. So I do think within the broader aim of these technologies is to create efficiency and automate areas that may be routine, mundane, repeatable, or by virtue of human distraction, lead to inaccuracy. So when we think about that aiming point, the benefits could be we're going to create now roles that have far more value and interest and opportunity for creativity and human connection rather than the mundane and the repetitive. At the opposite end of the scale, and neither will be 100% of what happens, so there will be some of both, is the fact that roles will be lost and humans will be replaced by machines. The reality is there will be some combination of those extremes on a role-by-role basis across different industries and across different organisations.
Nice. So that's some of the opportunities. What do you see as being some of the challenges?
Yeah, well, look, the challenges are broad and wholesale change. As I know from our time in the technology sector, but it doesn't have to be digital technology. Any new technology coming in creates change, creates disruption, and it creates the dislodgement of established patterns and routines. So these are all the challenges. The scope for AI, as I just defined it, to create widespread disruption is, I think, a challenge in itself. This will not be an incremental change. Use an example, I used to pick up the phone and talk to someone and now use a mobile and I can see them as well. This provides some really significant change. So the challenge then happens on two fronts. Firstly, there's the challenge of how do I build the skills to implement this technology from a technology implementation perspective effectively? And the second piece is, it comes in two parts, but it's really around people. The first is, how do I build the skills and capability to manage and navigate this technology effectively? And the second part is, how do I adapt the culture of my organization to incorporate these new technologies? Now, as we're talking about technology and AI, the word culture might seem really incongruent. But let's break this down really to the primary point. We define organization culture as the way that things are done around here. You implement a range of new technologies that change the nature of the work. You are going to impact the culture. By definition, the way that things are done around here is going to change, and that will require cultural change. And the organizational world, as viewed through my lens, as I think about it from a leadership, from a strategic people and culture change area, that is absolutely vital. It's one of the bigger challenges, and the risk comes because it's so easy to overlook.
Yeah, and really some valuable insights there. Can you share some insights into effective strategy for integrating AI solutions into organizations successfully while prioritizing the needs and concerns of your workforce?
Absolutely. So I think this maybe even sounds trite as I think about it and prepare to say it, Vannessa. I think the first piece to be very cognizant of for organizations is the involvement of the people who will be impacted and work with. We say impacted because it almost by definition, it feels like, oh, this is change, this is difficult. People within the organizations whose roles will change by virtue of using this technology. Now, before we even get into what types of change that might be. So involvement. Now, that sounds really trite because everyone instinctively knows from a change perspective that involvement leads to better engagement. But I think we need to think about that and be very focused on the way that we implement to create involvement. Now, there are some very practical situations in that very often the way that things work that we want to automate isn't neatly proceduralized and documented. So being quite pragmatic, if we get, though that knowledge exists in the head of people whose work roles will change. So we need to engage with them to get the rich data out so we can automate it effectively. The other challenge, I think, which is I'll present this as a risk. There is always a risk that we think about these initiatives as being narrow and project-based, whereas actually the challenges that will arise from this have to be viewed from a broad organizational perspective. I might expand on this as we continue to talk, but the impacts of a change in, say, one division or one department, if we just said increased automation through the use of chatbots into a contact center environment, the implication of that feeds in far broader than just whichever team is running that contact center. It will impact on the teams who have responsibilities for client relationships. It will impact on the enabling functions like finance, like HR, like risk, like marketing, because the dynamic of the offering will actually change to the customer. So we have to think about this very broadly rather than get narrowly focusing on it as a technology implementation. So those would be the two biggest things that I would say are the challenges behind this sort of change.
Yeah, great. Great insights there, James. So, from a human capability standpoint, what are your thoughts on navigating the balance between replacing, retaining, and redeploying talent in the context of AI implementation?
I think the starting point is that one needs to think about those three options. The response to the first question was, it almost depends on your perspective on this. This could be doom and gloom for employment. I'm sure the rise of the motor car, there were plenty of stable hands saying, well, what the hell am I going to do? So there's that risk of perspective, but the technology will create jobs, it will change jobs. And there will be a need for some jobs to go away because they're no longer the most effective and efficient and valuable way to use the capability that one has in one's organization. So I think those three things, recognizing those three things, become vitally important. There's a real risk that one just thinks, I'm going to implement this technology, it's all about efficiency, or I'm going to save some headcount and potentially as an individual I might lose my job and my skill and capability might be subsumed by technology. I think far more we will see jobs changing. I think we definitely have to think about retraining because new skills will enter the workforce. I worked on a project a number of years ago, actually in a contact center. And what we found was there are several people out there who are now experts in developing digital automated products because we took them from being contact center people and we retrained them as part of that project to actually develop digital helpers, if you like, that were then implemented into the organization. Back to the key point, we have to think about redeployment. Jobs are going to go away. How do we redeploy people into other existing roles that are less impacted? How do we retrain people for the new technologies that will come in? And how do we think about the retooling of their jobs to accept that those jobs are going to change? And in any project, all of those three things will be relevant. I'm confident of that.
I think for me, it has to be really well thought out and really well planned because replacing or retaining or redeveloping it all requires a lot of thought on how to do that, how best to set people up for success, especially because what we know about the brain is no two people, no two brains are the same. We might have similarities,
absolutely.
but it's those nuances. And we actually want the best. We want to collaborate with the best strengths that we have to offer as a collaboration, which is what AI is meant to help us be able to do, take our ideas and be able to execute them quickly and more efficiently without what I call living in the task epidemic, where we're constantly working through a large list of tasks. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Being very well planned in this, and I would say this because it's what I do, but thinking about, a really deliberate change process around, what not just on the how do we think about the process, how do we think about the technology, how do we think about the people in any particular order, but really challenging ourselves in this to say, how do we think about the people at every stage through the process? I might give you a quick example, which I think helps Vannessa or maybe pose a dilemma, actually, rather than give an example, which I think really leads to why it's useful to have you and I on this conversation. But, there is a part, I think, that from a technology perspective, when these implementations are done well, one doesn't start out by saying, I want that technology to do this. There is a period of very clear discovery. So what are the processes? How do we make those more efficient? And then a determination as to what technology will enable us to do that. So I'll come back to your original view of process technology people. It is only at that point that we can start to engage the people with some certainty around what the future might look like. So this, if you like, is a classic leadership dilemma. So if we imagine ourselves in this situation, I as a leader have two choices here. I can start to open up conversations with my people about the fact that this change is going to happen, and they will look to me as a leader to provide them with some certainty. Now, if I do that at the start of this process, I'm going to stand up potentially in front of them or in front of a screen and frankly not be able to give them much certainty at all, other than the fact that we are starting this project. I won't be able to tell them what technology will be. I don't know what the outcomes will be. I don't know the impacts on their job. I don't know if they're going to have a job. Okay, I'm going to create uncertainty. Now, that leads me with another option, which is I don't engage them. And I do a whole bunch of work sort of covertly to get to the point where I can answer all of those questions. And in doing that, the massive downside is they haven't been involved in the change. The people who are most impacted, haven't been involved in that change process. They haven't had input. I haven't taken notice of the value and the wisdom that exists within them based on their experience, and therefore I'm less likely to be successful. So this is a classic dilemma. At what point do I involve? Do I involve at the point and create uncertainty, or do I hold back? And that comes at the risk of deeper engagement, which I know will lead to success. It's a huge dilemma for leaders.
And I can really empathize with that. I have a real life experience where I actually saw this particular team. They made this huge transformation announcement that they're restructuring how they're doing business and moving forward. They made the announcement, and this one particular team didn't get any communication from anyone. It took one person to go, oh, we haven't received any information. I think that means that we're going to be impacted. I'm going to start looking for a job. The second person went, oh, do you really think that that's what's happening? Well, I better go and do that too. So it was like dominoes. What ended up happening was when the organisation came back to make the announcements on the change, this team was actually not impacted at all. But because they weren't spoken to or engaged in any shape or form, they all went into a threat state and they saw this as a bad thing. And within 6 months of the announcement, they had all left that team because they had fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Absolutely. So maybe I sort of posed that dilemma in part back to you, Vannessa, and looking at this through your area of expertise and thinking about the neuroscience and the way that we as humans, we as people are going to react. You've talked about threat states and so forth there. As you think about that dilemma, what are some of your insights based on, how do people react when faced with these threats and uncertainty around dealing with change? Could we help solve that dilemma through your expertise?
So change equals threat. It triggers for a lot of people uncertainty, and there's a lot of effort and energy involved with actually dealing with change that people don't understand. We as humans can change at any time. If we choose to. If we choose to buy in and go, yes, I buy into this, I understand the why and the purpose. But what happens a lot of the time, I'm sure you have seen this in your many years of working in HR, that we often overlook what's involved with the change process. It's like what you were talking about a moment ago, James, where we often just look at the technology of what it can do and why we're doing that, but we don't look at how we transform to actually work with it or how we can actually integrate it into how we work. There's not a lot of sometimes thought and planning into that. And some leaders assume that change always provides successful outcome. And then we have those leaders who are on the optimistic side. And then we have the pessimists. So we have different leadership traits that come out, and their intentions can sometimes land with purpose and intention, and sometimes it can rub people the wrong way. The team must understand the steps involved with moving towards the change and the goal and be confident about what the outcomes are and how they fit within the vision. It's like what I call an envision. It's about how do your people fit within the vision to create the vision for not only them, but for the client and the growth and the change and the outcomes from doing this in the first place, so that the energy is worthwhile, because change can be exhausting. It can wear people out. And this is sometimes can be interpreted as people being lazy, but people are disconnected. And I'll give you a real life example. I do Zumba. If you don't know, I'm the queen of Zumba. I've been told many a times over
the years. Are you going to
years.
give a demonstration now?
Maybe I'll hold it for the end. And I do Zumba with this amazing nurse. And I said to Sarah, how are you, Sarah? She said, oh, I'm not great, Vannessa. So, well, what's happening, Sarah? She goes, I've been a nurse for 30 plus years. And I love what I do and I love helping people. And we have a really tight community and culture in the unit that we're working within. But the hospital just made a huge announcement of this change, and we are no longer a standalone unit. We now have to be a part of all the different wards. And so our team is now dispersed throughout the whole hospital. And it's causing chaos, and we can't find things. We don't know who to speak to about certain things. We're like a fish out of water. I said, so what is happening? Like, how are you dealing with this? She said, well, a lot of people in my team, in my unit, are calling in sick because they don't want to go to work. And I go, do you know why they made this change, how it's meant to benefit you all and your patients? And she said, no, we don't know why. We think it's just because of cost savings that they're doing this. We have no idea of what the vision is or why we're doing this and how it actually benefits anybody except for saving costs. And I went, oh, that's really, really interesting. So you can just see time and time again, I'm constantly coming across people in these similar situations where they just don't know what the why and what the purpose is, how they fit into it, how they can add value to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember one of my sort of formative lessons, Vannessa, in change management was really thinking about it from the perspective of the audience, those people who will, I'm going to use the word this time, be impacted, whose lives will be changed by the result of this decision. And you've got to think about the rational side. That's typically what we come to from a commercial perspective. You really have to recognize the emotional side. So what is at risk here? That's loss of relationship, loss of confidence, loss of routine. And then you've got to think about what is the capability build? How do I get that sense of confidence and competence back in the process? And it's only then can we ask for the commitment. You know, when we've understood and worked on those things, we get to the commitment piece. So I wonder, you know, given that last few minutes of conversation, Vannessa, what advice could you give to leaders? What are some of the advice, key pieces of insights maybe around change from your perspective would lead to greater success?
It's really starting with the why and the purpose. I love the work of Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
And I really buy into that. It's people don't buy into the what and the how, they buy into why you're doing it. And how do they fit within that why and that purpose, which is what I call the envision. It's about how do your people fit within that? And it's telling a story that goes straight to their emotional center, captures the hearts and minds of your people to go, we're serving a bigger purpose that's bigger than us. And this is how we all can add value to that. And really calling out the benefits for what's involved for your people, for your staff, and for your clients. If you've got happy staff, you're going to have happy clients. One of with working with technology and doing a lot of the change process and the mindset shift, tests and pilots are amazing. Once you design, start with the why, create your envision, actually take it out to and actually test it within different parts of your organization to actually get feedback and insights and what are some of their questions, what are some of their concerns, but really listen to what they have to say because that's where the gold is. If you can anticipate what their questions are and what you know and don't know, because by the way, as a leader, we often feel that we have to know all the answers to everything, but sometimes we can actually involve our people to help us solve and come up with the solution. It doesn't all have to be on the leader itself, but it's being very, very clear and creating clarity on what we do know and what are we going to work out together along the journey. And I would say break down change into very small bite-sized steps. So even though the brain can actually evolve and change at any time, it takes a lot of energy. So breaking it down into small bite-sized steps and having little milestones along the way and actually celebrate those wins and celebrate the milestones of just moving the needle by 1% and how we're doing that differently can really, really contribute to having an engaged and motivated team that's with you, even though you might have challenges or the unknown that we still got to work through, but we're in it together.
Yeah. You make it sound so simple, Vannessa. It's sort of the one, I guess we both do. We have our 1, 2, 3s and the frameworks that we use. So, you know, as we're sitting here today, sort of conceptually talking about it, let's sort of boil it down. What value, from your perspective, does that external consulting offering actually bring to an organization?
Think of a change process or a transformation or implementing AI. Think about that an organization's normally on a train. They want to get to the top of a mountain, and that's their goal and outcome. But being a consultant like you and I, we actually have so many different experiences and working with so many different organizations that we actually can be in that helicopter, actually looking at the train, climbing that mountain, and actually can steer and ask some really great questions and have frameworks that actually can help them get to the top of the mountain with a whole lot more ease in brain-friendly ways that doesn't impact your people's health and well-being, which allows them to collaborate, to be able to lean in and to be able to have open conversations and feel like they're actually making a difference in what they're doing to actually help the organization to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. I'm bound to say underappreciated as a consultant, but it's that bringing of the objectivity, the not being drawn into the routines, not having all of the organizational knowledge, it's the opportunity to ask sometimes the dumb, hopefully the pertinent questions that bring out that clarity of thinking, as well as bringing the expertise and experience that really adds value. So that's maybe next question, and Vannessa, off the back of that is, when and how to engage yourself or someone like me into a significant and AI-related change process?
As early as possible is the short answer.
Yeah,
Often, and I'm sure you're the same, James, often I
absolutely.
get brought
Absolutely.
in down the track where the damage is already done. It hasn't been
Mm-hmm.
thought well, planned well, executed well. Hence, I've seen tragic stories like Sarah from a nursing perspective,
Mm-hmm.
like that business that went through a major organization change and didn't communicate with a particular team. And so the implications are devastating, right? Loss of good talent, right? Because they'll go to other organizations if they feel fear or uncertainty. You want people to be in it with you, you want them to be invested, and you want people to engage. So we are experts at this. So bring us in as early as possible, just when you're even thinking about whether it's an AI project or any transformation project. I worked with this amazing IT team where they were going through a major transformation project, and they brought me in to do pilots and get people to actually test it and give feedback. And we
Mm-hmm.
collated case studies and videos, and it was amazing because it wasn't just commercialized stuff. It was real, like people were authentically sharing insight into what was working, what wasn't working, and making those changes before we rolled it out to a whole organization. And also getting stakeholders to buy in early is a process in itself. So how to reach out to us is see below in the description here. You'll have James and my contact details. Feel free to set up a 30-minute meeting with either of us or together.
Or both of us, very much.
We can be a double package where we can sit down and spend 30 minutes going through what are some of your challenges? What are you wanting to achieve? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And what's the outcome that you really want to achieve? And we can help give you some insight from all of our years' experience. Between us, we have 50 years. So book now. See below details. And James, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your valuable insights. I'm very grateful.
Vannessa, my absolute pleasure. Thank you. Similarly, I'll mirror your comments. Absolute pleasure, absolute honour. Really nice once again to reconnect, and look forward to more conversations soon.
Okay, take care, everybody. Have a great day.
See you soon.